Hello, my name is Bill Leahy, K0MP. And being that it's just a few days before the start of a next semester in CW beginning level, I wanted to go over a few frequently asked questions from beginners, questions that I get even before the class starts. And remember, this is just for beginners here. That's what I'm talking about. And we're going to talk about paddles and mostly about paddles and also connecting up possibly to a rig that you would use during the sessions. It turns out that the keyers and the tone output of it is very pleasing if you use a regular rig instead of a side keyer. But either way works. But we'll go a little bit over what you need to do. You don't need to run power or anything like that while you're on the air, or only on the air, but you don't need to run power when you're in class. Okay, let's start off with the paddles. And paddles are a very personal thing. And CW operators from day one have been pretty adamant about the way they use and set up their paddles. And whether that was a straight key, a bug, all kinds of different keys. But we'll be using paddles in the class. So even the Navy during World War II, the CW operators, they used bugs. And they had their own personal bugs. Nobody touched the setting of the bug during time on board ship when they were sending, or probably for that matter on land too. So this again is an individual thing. We'll go over it a little bit. The choice of a key again is a personal thing. There's more inexpensive keys and real expensive keys. Many brands, Vibraplex, Bencher, Kent, Bugali, N3ZN, all great keys. Some are more expensive than others. So your choice is going to be purely personal, what you want to put into it. And we'll go over some of the keys that I see generally students use during classes. The price goes all over the place. You can buy them at a Hamfest used. You can buy them on eBay. You can buy a new one. So generally a new price for a key runs around $165 at this time anyway. And of course you can go up to the $500 keys if you want. But we suggest that you stay kind of in the medium to lower price range when you start to see how you like it. You may want to choose another paddle, be purely a personal choice of yours. So how do you choose which paddle to use, you know? And one of the biggest questions I get is, are we going to use iambic keying or not? And iambic keying is a very personal thing. There's adamant people that use it all the time, and they're generally veterans that approach almost perfect sending with this function. And should I buy an iambic key or not? Well, it really doesn't make too much difference because iambic keys have two levers, excuse me, a 2 instead of just a 1. The 2 levers allow you to squeeze key. It's short for squeeze keying. So in other words, you squeeze the keys together on a few different letters of the alphabet, 7 letters or so, something like that. So many students ask about this. And either one, if you use a single lever or a dual lever, it doesn't make any difference. If you want the possibility sometimes of using, in the future, using iambic keying, you can. And here's why we don't recommend iambic keying for beginners. For beginners, you're going to have a lot of time creating muscle memory during the 2 months that you're in class. And it's much easier just to do a straight thumb press of one side for dits and the index finger for DAWs, just straight on, rather than squeeze keying. So we don't recommend squeeze keying. What will happen is you'll be able to do it eventually, but you'll be finding yourself falling behind other students. And you need some confidence when you start. You don't need to kind of a drag from behind. Once you create the muscle memory, sure, go ahead and use iambic keying. That's great. I suggest on YouTube you can find a great tutorial of what squeeze keying is really like. Just search squeeze keying, Squeeze keying. Ashley Fanello is the author of that channel, or the owner of that channel. He does a great job of it. You can see what it's like. And so we won't go too much more into squeeze keying, but again, either kind of key will work, whether it's an iambic key or a single lever key. Either one is fine. Let's see. We're going to talk about keyers a little bit. Keyers, if you're going to use your own radio for your side tone in the radio, to use it for classroom use, generally they'll be set up in either, and you'll have a choice probably, iambic A or iambic B. That's another kind of a misnomer. We're not going to really use iambic squeeze keying, but we will use a keyer that incorporates iambic. So generally B is used, your choice. You can use A or B, but generally most people use B. The one thing that you'll find out if you use B is that you'll have to be very careful in using your keyer by going too fast. We don't want you to do that anyway, but should you do that, you'll find out that when you start running things together, you'll wind up getting an extra dit or a dot at the end that you didn't mean to send. The actual keyer thinks you squeezed it instead of just a single lever type of thing. So make sure you stay within the keyer's limits. In other words, if you set it for 25 words a minute, send it 25 words a minute or slower to Farnsworth it out to make more spacing. But if you try to send too fast, that's when you're going to create mistakes. So that's what it's going to be like. Personally, again, this is personally, I like automatic keying. And really the only keyers that you can use are K1EL for their chips to get automatic. And what does that give you? That doesn't do the iambic portion. What it'll do is, as long as you press the dit side, it'll send dits. It won't send one more. And the DA side the same way. And what'll happen is, with squeeze keying, if you squeeze it, it'll just alternate between dits and DAs. I'll squeeze a key here and kind of show you. So it's going da 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 da, and I happened to squeeze the key on the dit side first. So it's going to go da 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 da. But it could go da 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 da. And there's da 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 da. I squeeze the da side first. As long as you keep squeezing it, it'll alternate between the two. Okay, that's the difference. But again, if you're going to send an A, that's just hitting the dit side one time and the da side one time. And that's just muscle memory that you'll gain in beginning. Some of the paddles that you can choose from that are in the mid-range, a lot of students use the Bencher BY series, or the Vibraplex Code Warrior is another one. The Kent TP1B are all those are good choices, first choices. If you can find one used, great. But they're in the $165 range new. So that might help somewhat. And what's the difference between a really expensive keyer, or key, paddle I should say, and a more inexpensive one? Well, the one thing is a lot of the finish is superior. The $500 ones just are like jewels. They're really collector's items almost. But the most important thing is that they can be used for fast sending. And one thing that creates this over over the intermediate or medium priced ones is that the screws that are used to adjust the key are very fine threads, and so you can get very fine adjustments on your paddle, and that makes a difference for very fast sending. But we're not going to be doing fast sending in the beginning, so that's not a real requirement. So let's see, what else do I want to tell you about this? Just settle for, if you can have a choice to test out for that, like if you know somebody with a lot of different keys, just whatever feels the best to you. What I use, and again, this is just pure personal, is I use the Kent TP1B and also an old Vibraplex 1966 paddle that I had when I was a kid. So they still work just fine, and I use them in class actually for sending. Now the adjustment of the paddle, and that makes a difference. All paddles have these adjustments. The first one being tension. Usually on medium price paddles, it's a spring. In other words, it's the tension or pressure that it takes to press those paddles to connect. In other words, for the contacts to close, like that. Usually, you don't want it too light, you don't want it too heavy. If you find out that you've got it a little bit too heavy, maybe your dit to DAWs or DAW to dit transitions are harder because it takes a little bit more pressure to push them one way or the other. So you don't want it too hard, but you don't want it, the tension to be too weak either, to where you just look at it and it makes a dit or a DAW. So something in between. Again, what we recommend is sending a few, if you're a beginner, sending a few letters in a row, see if you make mistakes. What feels the best? You don't want to send an A and it go a, you want to send a, so that is not right. So maybe that was too much tension, whatever, but you want to have the nice spacing in there. So the next thing, and really important, I've seen dramatic changes in this during the class, even during the semester. Contact closing. Again, it's personal. In other words, how close to those contacts, how close are they before they make contact? And both sides, the dit and the DAW side of the paddle, need to be the same, whatever that is. But you don't want them too close. You don't want them too far apart. If they're too close, again, that's like a hair trigger. You just have to think about moving your hand, and you're going to send a dit or a DAW. Maybe you didn't want to send that. So you need to open up the contacts. So if you open them too wide, again, you're going to have maybe a longer dit to DAW transition or DAW to dit. So whatever makes the best rhythm, send a few letters in a row, send 5 letters in a row. See how well you did. Change the gap a little bit. In my case, and again, this is personal, but I wouldn't think you'd want them any closer than this. I measured mine because students wanted to know what I did, and mine are set up for about 4/1000 of an inch. So with a feeler gauge. So if that gives you an idea, you wouldn't. I don't think you'd want them closer than that, but I think you'd want them wider than that. Why? Because we're going to send slower. And the closer you get those contacts, the faster you can send. But you have to have practice, and we don't have that yet as beginners. So we're gaining that. It'll come. Speed will come. What we're after in beginning is nice, clear spacing. Nice, clear-cut characters, and when we send words, nice Farnsworth words. In other words, separate the words. You send a 25 word a minute character speed, but separate out the different characters to make a word. In other words, if we send the word ate, ATE, like eating something, we want to send it spaced out. Still 25 words a minute. That's fine. But if you say, well, I want to impress Bill, so I'm going to send, wow, that was really fast, but that's a P to me, because you ran elements together, and now that you made a P. Da, da, dit winds up to be, if you race them and put them together fast, a P. So you want a nice, clear, spaced letter. Just like that. Again, speed will come when muscle memory comes. And how do you get muscle memory? You send over and over again until you start to get tired, and then you quit. Don't press your physical and mental capabilities too far, because you just start making mistakes and get frustrated. And again, if you watch my other videos, you're going to find out frustration is the enemy. Now, I'm going to share some pictures here about paddle placement in reference to your rig, but mostly in reference to you. And the first one, okay, here, you can see my rig. This is a little mountain topper. It's a soda rig that I use, but that's not the point. That could be as small as that, put it in your pocket, or it could be, a great big full-featured rig, 70 pounds worth, whatever. But the idea is the placement. So you can see this key, and here's my 1966 paddle here. And again, you can see it's a single paddle in this case. The bencher happens to be a two paddle. But anyway, everything looks really nice, and we're at 90 degrees to one another, and wow, you can take a picture and it looks really good, right? But you're going to find out that what you want to do is accommodate your paddle. Your paddle has to accommodate you. You don't accommodate the paddle. Okay, so we're going to go through this right now. So you start out looking like that, taking pictures or whatever you want to do. But now, here's what you want to do when you send. You want to be sure you have your arm, most of your arm at least, but definitely your hand and your wrist on the table, resting. And what I've done here is just put it up on the table, total rest, just flopped it up there. And that's where my hand wound up. Okay, so leave your hand and wrist just like it is. Now we're going to grab that paddle and we're going to orientate it to us. And what's the object of the game here? The object of the game is to be able to send accurately with fewer mistakes and not get tired while you're doing it. So right now, all muscles are at full rest. All right. So now you can see I've taken the paddle, and what I call in class, I call it backing it in the doghouse. I took the paddle and just opened my thumb and forefinger and placed the paddle in between the two. Okay? And however that paddle winds up, that's where it's going to stay. And I suggest you use, this is just a demo, but here on the table, I use rubber shelving material and place that underneath the paddle. One thing, a hint here, the paddle, when you're sending, can never move. Ever. Never move. Because if it does, you're going to start making mistakes. Okay, now the next picture, you'll see I'm trying to adjust it to where it's equidistant between the thumb and the paddle, or the lever, and the forefinger and the lever. So that should be pretty much the same. In other words, one shouldn't be an inch out here, and the next one just hugging the side of the paddle. Why? Because you don't want to make mistakes, dits and das. You want to make it easier. You want to make it easier to send dits and das in the transition. If you move one side out from the other, one thumb or forefinger, you'll start to make more mistakes. Because you have to make why? It takes longer to get your whatever finger or thumb is far away from the paddle than it is for the other side. So now you're going to start making rhythm mistakes. So anyway, take a look at that. I know when I start sending for long periods of time, maybe 800 characters, something like that, I'll start to make mistakes, and I'll glance down at my hand, and for some whatever reason in that period of time, it's moved a little bit one side or the other. I move it back in. I'm not making too many mistakes anymore. So this makes a difference. So let's take a look at the next one here. Okay. Now, this looks like the first picture all over again, except with my hand in it. Now, what am I doing here? This is what you don't want to do. If I didn't move that paddle in the previous pictures, my arm and wrist would look like this. And what is it doing? The wrist is cocked to the right, and I'm not going to send very long until I start to get some muscle tension in here, and it's going to make me make mistakes and make me want to stop too. So don't do that. We want to be totally relaxed when we send, so we can send for longer periods of time. We also have to have concentration. People don't realize that sending is just as important as copying. Yeah, we're going to do a lot of concentration when we're copying, all that sort of thing. You can't mail sending in. You can't go into autopilot. I found that out in some soda activations, being on top of a mountain, enjoying the scenery, running a pile up, not a problem. All of a sudden I start making mistakes. What's going on? I look down at my paddle, everything's fine. Why? Because I wasn't concentrating. I was looking at the scenery, trying to put the pile up on autopilot. That doesn't work. Okay? So concentrate. It's important because who's listening to this mostly during the semester? You. And you want to be able to hear good code. So send good code. If you're going too fast, slow down. Slow down. All right. Let's get back to there we go. And by the way, thanks for this picture. This is from WG0AT. Steve up in Colorado, big time soda guy. And he sent me these pictures for use in my class. So I thank Steve for that. So remember, the paddle choice is a personal one for you. But again, I would suggest just some medium price one. If you want to upgrade later, you can. But the Warriors and the Benchers and the Kents, all good keys. All good keys. One last thing too. You need to have clean contacts on your keys, and the best way to do this, and people have been doing this for a long time, is to find like a 3x5 card or a thicker piece of paper, put it in between the contacts, the two contacts on each side. You'll do this. Put it in there, close the paddle on the card, and then pull the card back through. Do that 2 or 3 times, and it should clean off anything that's in there. That you can usually tell if you get dirt in there or anything else, it'll start to kind of scratch and squeal when you touch the keys together. So every once in a while, do that. Clean them up. Now the last thing I wanted to get to, let's see, make sure I've got everything here. Yes, is the setup. Now the people that have keyers, standalone keyers, that's fine. I'm talking to the people that want to use their rig side tone for the class. And many students call up and say, well, I'll just put it into a dummy load and send it that way. But you don't have to. On most newer rigs, for quite some time, they've had a break-in switch in there. So you can go break-in, semi-break-in, or full break-in, or off. So you want to find your break-in switch or knob on your rig and turn it to off. In other words, you don't want to key the transmitter while you're sending. So what that's for is to practice code. That's exactly what we're doing. So I suggest that. That way you don't have to worry about sending or dummy loads or anything like that. The other thing is, I've found at least, I use Zoom, so my classrooms are in Zoom. Seems to be the pitch, CW pitch, it kind of likes about 700 hertz. That's a little high for a lot of people, but for Zoom, it's preferable, I find. It picks it up well. The other students can hear it. So I recommend my students and myself, I use 700. Normally you want to use something lower. The higher pitched side tones will kind of wear your ears out over time if you're going to send it for a long time. So if you want to practice with a lower frequency, that's fine. 600, whatever you want to do. But for class, 700 works well. Make sure you set your keyer speed on your rig to 25 words a minute. Okay. And then what you want to do is get on Zoom yourself and adjust the audio volume. You can do that. There's a little arrow by audio when you turn the audio on when you're on Zoom. That little arrow beside it, you can do a test, audio test. So send some code, just make some noise with your key, and see if that's into the green zone, in the mid zone of the audio level. And that way, when you get into the orientation part of the class, when we're checking these things, you'll be good to go already. But generally, that's one of the things that we do in orientation is check that everybody can hear everybody else, including me. And so the next time we meet is a regular class. So those are the kind of things I would suggest that you do. If you have any further questions, I would, just email or talk to your advisor, and I'm sure he can answer them. Everybody's going to be different. This is just the way I work things. Okay. So with that, I'll say 73. Good luck in your classes. I'm sure you'll do well. And we'll see you later. Bye-bye.